Okay, you're probably noticing that in this course, there's a heavy emphasis on major gift giving and planned giving, and less time spent on annual fund and fundraising letters and fundraising emails. And there's good reason for that. Um, one is just practical. There are lots of amazing tools and resources online for people running nonprofits who need to get out a letter or email campaign or run a peer to peer fundraising campaign. If you sign up for the online tools that are necessary to do that, like Classy or some of the crowd fundraising sites, or if you're CRM, like Donor Perfect or Razor's Edge or even Salesforce, something like that, if you're using those tools yet, um, all of those things have great resources on when to send emails, what to do to get those read, and so forth. And so, spending time in the course on that seemed less productive than focusing on things where it's a lot harder to get training, like how to listen to someone who's maybe a planned gift prospect, or how to um, really engage a major gift um, donor with a proposal and qualify it through qualification to get there, like we cover in the course. That said, I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk about fundraising letters because they really are quite important. And I'm going to glance at my notes. You're going to see me doing that. This is the era of COVID, and it's kind of informal. But I wanted to say that fundraising letters are more than just a letter. While we often use the term letter to refer to what we mail, it can be packages of material, it can be emails, it can be text messages at this point, memes, gifs, anything that you're using to communicate really is a piece of your fundraising package. But at the end of the day, people give for certain reasons, and letters, digital or paper, are still key to that process. Your fundraising letter has to persuade the recipient to take an action. And at first glance, that's uh, often against their self interest. Give away money. Um, to give away a resource that we all need can feel scary, or at least annoying. Your job is to motivate people to take that step anyway. Experts in the field often suggest that there are 5 key motivators into which fundraisers should tap when they're trying to motivate people. And those are fear, exclusivity, guilt, greed, and anger. I believe that the reality is much more complex, that there are a variety of additional factors, including more positive motivations like goodwill, connection to a cause, and hope. Still, think about the fundraising that you're seeing, particularly this year in an election year, as divisive as this one has been, and with the pandemic and all of the pieces. What motivations are the fundraisers behind the material that you're seeing utilizing? There's a lot of data that suggests that those negative things can be effective for immediate gifts. What I want to point out, though, is that that's for a transactional gift. You can scare someone or guilt someone or even offer an inducement to their greed for a transactional type gift. One gift right now, right? Over time, though, that is exhausting and it wears the donors out. So if you're the type of fundraiser, like I hope you will be, that's looking to develop a relationship with an individual so that they give to your organization for years to come and at increasing levels as their ability increases, then maybe we need to be looking at different sorts of motivators and connections. On the most basic terms, people give, they send money to you because you ask them to, because they are in the habit of doing so, because they believe they can purchase an impact, something that they want, because the gift will make something happen, maybe even right now, because you will recognize them for it. You will give them something tangible in return. How many of you have your NPR tote bags? You enable them to take a stand, to be counted on the side that they want to be counted upon, among. You give them a chance to belong, because you give them inside information if they give. Because you help them preserve their worldview by validating a belief that they hold dear, and that has a lot of value. People send money because you give them the chance to release emotional tension caused by a major life event, or accumulation thereof, or a global pandemic. People send money because they're afraid. That's true too. So these are the types of reasons that you need to use in your letters. You need to tell stories in your fundraising letters that lead to the types of emotional responses and a call to action that corresponds with those responses. Fundraising letters are about making the case for support. In order to do that, you have to answer the prospect's questions, the potential donor. The more you can answer without them having to ask, the better off you are. So what types of questions do fundraising letters inspire? Where did this letter come from? What's inside the envelope? Who wrote the letter? Why are they writing to me? How much money do they want from me? Are they being truthful? What happens if I respond? Do I have to sign anything? What happens if I don't do anything? When do I need to do this? As you think about answering those questions in the text of your letter, or the photos, or the titles, or highlighted pieces, we need to recognize the way in which people read a fundraising letter. And there are often what experts have called 4 waves of recognition. If the writer doesn't grab the prospect's attention and answer their unspoken questions, the letter will not produce very many responses. Sigrid Vogel is a professor who has studied fundraising letters and their impact since the 1970s. He describes 4 waves of recognition this way. Wave 1. You've got 20 seconds to engage the reader. Most folks can open the envelope, examine the contents on a surface level at least, and decide whether to spend any more time on this letter within that first 20 seconds. This is the greatest time of danger for a fundraiser. Survive these critical seconds and you have jumped the biggest hurdle. You've answered the first set of questions successfully. The questions have to be answered with your design, the logo, the heading, etc., because that's all they're going to have time to take in. In wave 2, it involves the prospect actually reading the letter, or at least skimming it. You've got to engage another round of questions now. Your actual text must answer questions and point out the benefits that will be received or things that will be lost if someone fails to act. If not, it is likely going to be thrown into the trash unanswered. The third wave of recognition is a time in which you must inspire immediate action. If your prospect sets the letter aside, even with the intention to respond later, they probably won't. So, wave 3 is about answering the question about when to do this with a resounding right now. In wave 4, it's similar to wave 3. The prospect sets your letter aside without reacting directly. Here, though, it isn't because they are procrastinating. Instead, the letter didn't drive them to decide on how they will respond. Most often that means how much money they will send. Vogel estimates that 50% of the letters that get set aside in this way will end up getting lost or otherwise trashed, and we'll have lost our chance to raise funds from those donors in this letter. The first 20 seconds. Let's break this down into 3 phases. Phase 1, before the envelope is opened. Phase 2, the first glance, which is approximately 4 seconds. And phase 3, you get 8 more seconds. Phase 1, before the envelope is opened. Recipients turn over the envelope, they note how it is addressed, they read the return address, read any other text that's on the envelope, and they look for a way to open it. And then finally, we hope, they tear it open. Phase 2, the first glance. The reader picks up and examines the contents, and even before she has read a single word, the materials have an immediate impact on her. She unfolds them, forms a general impression of what they contain. Phase 3, 8 more seconds. The reader will now do a skim read, catching any headings, bolded text, or other standout features. They'll note who signed the letter, and if there is a postscript, that is what they will likely read first. In many cases, it's the PS at the end of the letter that makes or breaks everything about the letter, because it may be the only full sentence that people read. Okay, so far I've really been talking about human behavior and what we're trying to accomplish with a letter and its design based on human behavior. But there are 3 key pieces of the letter itself that we also want to address. 1, the letter is an appeal from one person to another. 2, it describes the opportunity for the recipient to meet personal needs or achieve personal desires by supporting the charitable aim and making the gift. In other words, the letter is from the fundraiser to the individual, even if you're sending out thousands in a sort of mail merge or blanket letter campaign. That letter is to that donor. The letter invites the recipient to take a specific and immediate action. One size does not fit all. You have to determine to whom you are reaching out in order to guess which questions they will have and how to spend your precious time answering those questions. A very well constructed letter sent to the wrong people, and therefore answering the wrong questions for the audience, won't do nearly as well as one where the audience and content align. You can use all of these rules to design the perfect fundraising letter for a conservative supporter of gun rights and faith-based initiatives, right? But if you then send that letter to a bunch of liberal activists, the letter's going to fall flat, even if it's perfectly constructed against the rules of human behavior, with the taking in mind short sentences and communicating, right? We've got to pick the right audience. We have to know who we're sending our letter to and then design for them. Before you begin writing, you need to answer a few questions of your own. Why are you writing this particular letter? To whom are you writing? What are you going to ask them to do? What are the relevant circumstances? Who will sign the appeal? What benefits will people get if they respond? And why do they need to respond right now? I'm being repetitive, but that's because I want these questions to sink in. When you can answer all of these questions, refine your answer until you can do so in one paragraph. Now you have a succinct purpose and message, and now you can write your letter. The 7 steps for writing a fundraising letter. 1. Determine the contents of the package. 2. Draft the reply device. 3. Write the outer envelope. 4. Write your opening paragraph. 5. Write the PS. 90% of the time, readers will read that first, remember, so it is your real lead-in to your letter. Often groups restate the ask in the PS, and that might work, but you may be much better off focusing on a benefit there. Consider using headings or text in bold to communicate your context. Write the text. But write the text last, after you've done all of the design pieces and figured out how you're going to share your message through the bold headings and the postscript and any images you might use. Key rules to live by: you and I language. But say you more often. What do I mean? Again, the letter is from one individual to another. So it shouldn't use formal generic language and terms. It should talk about you, the reader, and I, the writer. But it should talk about you, the reader, more. Appeal on the basis of benefits, not needs. In other words, people are more inspired by achieving something than by saving your organization. You'll be much better off in the long run if your fundraising focuses on achieving your goals rather than sustaining or getting through a crisis. Ask for money, not support, and ask for it now. Be clear about what it is you need and want, and that's money. Good writing isn't good fundraising. You're appealing to the masses here, so write short sentences, small words, simple ideas. The letter should be as long as you need it to be to make your case and answer the right questions. Remember, most people won't read it all anyway. So if it's longer than a page, as so many fundraising experts on YouTube will tell you you should never be longer than a page, why not? People will read the amount that they need to get their questions answered. So focus less on keeping your letter short and more on making the information accessible quickly. Okay, I want to take a moment to talk about the audience for your fundraising letter. There's a couple of different ones, and they have different personalities. You could be writing a letter to acquire new donors, in which case you're going to have a lot more questions to answer about who you are and why the gift matters and what will happen with the money. You could ask regular donors for an extra gift. That's a great way to keep things going and to get people to raise their hands and say they're interested in doing more. Asking regular donors for a larger gift is a really great way to initiate a major gift qualification piece, in addition to raising some money. I've used this effectively throughout my career, working in global nonprofits with many, many monthly donors making small gifts by sending out letters making the case for $1,000 gift. Now, it's a big jump from somebody who gives $35 a month to give $1,000, but the ones who do, they're interested in what you're doing, and it's time to find out more about those folks. So a fundraising letter like that not only raises a bunch of money, potentially, but it also helps develop your major gift program. You can write letters that are about converting donors into monthly recurring donors. That's one of the biggest things going on in fundraising right now, is trying to get people onto that monthly subscription of giving, because donor retention is so terrible. We're losing donors left and right. Many of our organizations lose as many donors as they bring on every year, and they can't grow that way. Go back and look at the fundraising benchmarks again and think about donor retention and how much easier it would be if your donors were monthly donors. You can also write a letter that's turning donors into advocates for your cause, asking them to take the next step, recruit other people to be donors, advocate policy issues. Those are ways of engaging people that aren't specifically financially driven, for a particular gift, but it might be worth doing. Okay, like I said before at the start, a letter can be digital or it can be on paper. So let's take a moment to know some key things about email. And the one of the key things I want you to know is that more than 2/3 of email is now read on a mobile device, not on a PC. So we often still see fundraisers designing their emails as if the person who receives it is going to be sitting at a desk in an office during the workday, but that is rarely the case anymore. We're checking our email on our phones, and we should make sure that we are designing the email with that screen in mind. Allow for white space. Don't fill every possible piece of the screen with information. It will be overwhelming and people won't read it. Make sure your main message is presented in text form, not an image or an infographic, because with all the security features out there today, it can often get missed, right? The image can be blocked by the server or any number of reasons that it would make it impossible for the person to tell what you were asking. Okay, the last thing I want to say is always have an acknowledgement plan. What is your onboarding and follow-up strategy? How are you going to say thank you? When, by whom, and in what format? Is it another letter? Is it an email? Is it a phone call? Or a handwritten note? I've been doing fundraising for 16 years. I've got donors in 3 different countries and all across this country that I work with. And I will tell you that it is still, to this day, a handwritten thank you that gets the most response after a gift. I go see people in person, or at least I did before the pandemic, on a very regular basis. I used to travel up to 40% of my time. That's very, very important. I use all sorts of text, email, Zoom meetings, and other pieces of technology to stay in touch in between. But that handwritten thank you note goes a long way. So I encourage you to include that in your acknowledgement plan. But you can't do it for everyone, particularly if you're writing fundraising letters to your entire donor base. So how quickly are you going to say thank you? How specifically can you say thank you for the gift they made? And who's going to be responsible so you make sure it happens? Those are some key highlights on how to, on a fundraising letter. You can choose this as one of your course project pieces. If so, I highly encourage you to go back through, make some notes about the pieces, the phases that people go through as they look at a letter and the ways of writing a letter, and use that in your course rationale to explain how you went about writing your letter. I hope it's useful, and thanks for watching.